It's a colorful early morning, riding into the town of Ketchikan, where we'll walk on a boardwalk that goes into town. Ketchikan is the state's southeasternmost major settlement. Downtown Ketchikan is a National Historic Landmark District. There's a population of about 8,000 people, and they think that the Tlingit name that they gave to Ketchikan means thundering wings of an eagle. Ketchikan Creek served as a summer fish camp for Tlingit natives for untold years before the town was established by Mike Martin in 1885. He was sent to the area by an Oregon canning company to assess prospects. He established the saltery Clark and Martin and a general store with Nova Scotia native George Clark, who had been foreman at a cannery that burned down. Ketchikan became known as Alaska's first city due to its strategic position at the southern tip of the Inside Passage, connecting the Gulf of Alaska to Puget Sound. We're on our way to watch a show where loggers demonstrate their skills. When terrain and road building allowed, log trucks were used to get the logs from sort yard, barge, or sawmill. This is the Woodsman stream, one log truckload. The men would use simple equipment consisting of gaffs and rope to scale the lofty trees. This was one of the more dangerous jobs in the woods. The tops could sometimes slab off portions of the tree trunk, crushing the climber inside his steel core rope. There was competition, and the guys who won got to wave a flag. Working in the woods was a tough life. The last thing these men wanted to do was take a long boat or plane ride home each night after work. So the company built full communities that floated in a cove near the cutting area. Some float camps were bachelor camps, and others kept all the men and their families together. These floating camps were complete with living quarters, stores, schools, and churches. Some of these communities became the towns and cities you may find in Southeast Alaska today. This is a climbing competition to see who can get to the top first.
What are you doing? What are you guys doing? All right, let's see how spring. And Spruce now takes away. Make some. It's our final event of today's competition, the long roll. And make some noise.
historic Creek Street. For 50 years, a thriving community of independent women lived in working houses along this creek. A handful of them never left and lived out their days right here. What you see now might not look and feel too different than it was in its first heyday, but the Creek Street community was almost lost to deterioration. Up until the 1950s, this area was full of successful businesses, with many of them being woman-owned. The end of Prohibition and banning of prostitution sent the area into decline. Without the money from the traditional income sources, buildings and boardwalks fell into disrepair. The resurrection of this iconic part of Ketchikan began in 1970 with the formation of the Creek Street Historic District. Every new frontier town was a place of energy and opportunity, and Alaska drew its share of fortune-seeking single men. It also attracted entrepreneurs who made their own fortunes selling goods and services to these single men. They included the owners of general stores, restaurants, hotels, and purveyors of liquor, gambling, and female companionship. So this is Dolly's house, Dolly Arthur, and she lived from 1919 to 1975 in this area. And she stated, by the time I was 18 or 19, I realized that I could make a lot more money from the attention of men than I could waiting on tables. Ketchikan began to change from a frontier settlement to a city seeking respectability and civic order. This included creating a town council and a 1903 decision to force so-called quote-unquote bawdy houses away from quote-unquote respectable development and into their own neighborhood. Thus was born the most infamous red light district in Alaska, here on Ketchikan Creek. While the female entrepreneurs were forced to move to the creek, they made the best of it. They invested in buildings, put down roots in the community, and had pride in the neighborhood they created. A rarity of the times, single women could actively shape their destiny. For a while, life on the shady side of Ketchikan Creek was great. Alaska attracted tough, resilient, independent women who had a hand at business. They were not cityfied like many of the working women down south. They bought property, paid off the law to operate, and spoke out. Most were members of the community, donated to worthy causes, some married, and all shopped in local stores. Most of them were not beholden to pimps or other men to operate their businesses. Many lived out their lives in the same houses that they worked in, adjusting to changing times, surviving. The end of Prohibition in 1933 and the Great Depression saw a decline in businesses all over the country. Dramatic changes after World War II also included social norms in America. Ketchikan's evolution saw a shift away from seasonal work and single men to year-round residents with families. Less business for Creek Street meant less maintenance money, which started the area's slow deterioration. Eventually, with protests from church leaders and women's groups, prostitution was banned in 1953. Regardless of what you think about it, it is an interesting history. Well, I think this message comes in loud and clear. If you walk these steps, you may die. There's a way to know and remember your salmon. There are 5, and that's no jive. Chum rhymes with thumb. Poke you in the eye, sockeye. Your biggest finger is the king. Your ring finger is where you wear your silver, coho, And your pinky is the pink salmon. We're back on the Norwegian Bliss, and we're headed to British Columbia.